if you can slip down to Walsh Street in South Yarra. Like, hold the sedan, not knowing what the rego is.
October the 12th, 1988 is a standout date in the history of crime in Australia. On this day, a line is crossed. A criminal taboo is broken.
Hot white, yeah, it's definitely stolen. Just have a look around, I'll get the rego, then we'll call it in.
2 young constables are lured to Walsh Street, South Yarra in Melbourne, and they're executed.
Senior Constable Tynan was hit in the head and Constable Eyre blasted in the back as he looked on from outside.
Australians are repulsed by the callous murders, and police anger is immediately directed against one of the nation's most ruthless criminal families. Drug dealers, rapists, armed robbers and murderers, all offspring of the notorious matriarch named Kath Pettingill.
But I didn't think I was notorious. I didn't think that I was this matriarch. I didn't think I was anything like that. I didn't think I was as bad as they made out.
Australia's most notorious criminal families. Generation after generation, on the whole side of the wall. Crime Investigation Australia, families of crime.
Scum is probably the most relevant word that you would describe her and her family.
Can I tell you, the moment I first met Kath, I could not speak. My mouth was dry and I was petrified because I was in the presence of Kath Pettingill and it was frightening.
Born in the Melbourne slums in the Great Depression in 1935, Kath is an unusual child who has fantasies about death and evil.
She deduced from what she read in the Bible that Satan was more powerful than God, and she wanted children. And so rather than pray to God that she would have children, and this was when she was still quite young, I think probably about 11 or 12, she prayed to Satan that she would have 10 children.
The first of her 10 children is Dennis, who will become one of Australia's worst criminals, killing at least 5 people and possibly as many as 12. At the time of his birth, Kath is just 16 and incapable of caring for the baby. So Dennis and her next child, Peter, born about a year later, go to live with Kath's mother. The boys have a brutal upbringing with their grandmother and her boyfriend.
They were bad drunkards and they used to drink red wine every night. And every second night I'd get belted with a pot stick or something, or Dennis would be belted, you know. And it was a really horrible existence.
The 2 boys are led to believe that Kath is their big sister, who's left home with a small-time criminal named Billy.
Billy was violent and bashed her, but she didn't mind that. She had a boyfriend who was very loving and bought her chocolates and flowers, and she had to get rid of him because he was too kind to her.
Kath's satanic prayers will be answered, and she'll go on to have 8 more children, fathered by 2 different boyfriends. Of her 10 children, 5 will become notorious criminals. Dennis, rapist, drug dealer and ruthless killer. Peter, violent armed robber and drug dealer. Victor, murderous gangster and accused cop killer. Jamie, armed robber, drug addict. And Trevor, violent drug dealer and accused cop killer. A daughter, Vicky, will give birth to Kath's first grandson, Jason, who will also get sucked into his uncle's criminal lives. Kath's eldest son, Dennis Allen, grows into a vicious teenage street thug, And at 18, he ends up in jail. Kath, now in her mid-30s, leaves her job as a barmaid and becomes a prostitute.
She could earn in one night as a prostitute what it would take weeks and weeks to earn behind the bar. So from a purely financial point of view, it was very much more attractive. But Kathy being Kathy, she didn't remain as just a prostitute for very long. She very rapidly moved up the ladder to become a madam.
Charlie, come on.
To this day, at least one of her criminal children is unaware his mother was a prostitute.
She owned a brothel, but she didn't work it, to my knowledge.
She certainly didn't hide the money she was making from the profession, because the boys used to queue up asking for bail money for their mates.
By this time, Dennis and Peter have both left home, but they maintain contact with their younger half-brothers, often standing up for them against the discipline that's now being meted out by Kath's new husband, Jimmy Pettingill.
I was about 15, 16, you know what I mean? And I did say to him, you keep touching me brothers, we're going to do something with you. Anyway, not long after that, he killed himself in Adelaide.
When Dennis gets out of jail, he gets drunk with his brother Peter and two mates, and they imprison and rape two girls in a flat in suburban Sandringham. The gang then splits up. Peter and a mate embark on a 2-day violent, drunken rampage.
Oh, no, I just know we were flying. You know, if you're flying, you're flying. Simple as that.
In a random attack, Peter and his mate shoot at a passing motorist, and Peter then shoots a pizza parlour owner in the foot.
Yeah, his bloke got shot in the foot there. One of my friends was grabbed some food off a plate and he started blowing. They give him a hot fix.
In suburban Port Melbourne, Peter shoots and wounds another man.
Well, at Port Melbourne, a bloke pushed Alan Rudd, so I shot him in the face. You know what I mean?
Next, Peter and his mate gate crash a party. They're quickly thrown out. But as they leave, a man is badly wounded when he's shot in the back.
Oh, he told us to get going. So anyway, as my co-accused, she said in the statement, gun went off accidentally and he got shot.
All four men are caught. For the rape and shootings, Peter Allen gets 14 years jail. His brother Dennis Allen gets 10 for rape, although he only serves 5. And their mother's world also becomes more violent. Kath is shot in the eye during an argument with two prostitutes.
Yeah, I've been shot. Doesn't hurt. You go into a shock as soon as you're shot.
Kath's attackers are tried for murder, but she remains loyal to the criminal code of silence, which allows them to be acquitted. In 1982, Kath is running an illegal brothel in Stevenson Street, Richmond, and next door, her eldest son, Dennis Allen, establishes the headquarters of a violent crime empire.
It was a pretty complex place. We had Kath living in one house in Stevenson Street and Dennis next door. They had a kind of a communication system. Kath would scream out whatever she wanted and call for Dennis, and Dennis would then appear from the shadows, always looking pretty dishevelled, covered in tattoos, adorned with all sorts of jewellery, particularly heavy gold chains around his neck.
Throughout these next bloody years, Kath and Dennis will maintain an intense relationship, more brother and sister than mother and offspring, the whorehouse madam and the killer son.
I wouldn't think that Kath Pettingill knew everything on a day-to-day basis, but she'd certainly become aware of it, and where she could, she would assist, and whether that was concealing things or making sure police were confused or distracted from what they're doing, she would certainly play that role.
Together, They begin to buy up houses in Stevenson Street and adjoining streets and gradually build a solid compound that helps them avoid police raids.
Across the back of that was the railway line, the main railway line into the city, and of course he had access. They'd go and hide things up on the railway line in the ballast between the sleepers and that type of thing. So they exploited their environment. There was actually a hole cut out between the two premises through the wall, and the drug dealing would occur in the brothel, but the drugs would be handed in from the next door premises.
They were the #1 crims in Richmond, and Richmond was well known because of that family. And they were in full swing. You know, they owned 40 properties, they were untouchable.
Dennis surrounds himself with henchmen he refers to as soldiers. And he also entices a few local identities into his entourage.
And he put some white powder, took it off his penknife in a plastic bag, put the white powder in my drink, and half an hour later, my nose dried up, I felt I had a burst of energy, so I thought, if I take twice as much, I'll feel twice as good. And it wasn't long after that, probably a month, 6 weeks later, he injected in my arm. But he made sure that Kath was there to keep an eye on, you know, what comes in and what goes out. You know, they'd have like a fishbowl full of foils. Kath used to mark the foils with a green texture colour or a red one. Green is for go, speed, up. Red is for stop, slow, heroin.
Dennis fortified the premises. They would have grills and iron gates and that type of thing on their premises, on their windows. He'd have safes, he'd have hidey holes everywhere. He'd always have any amount of weapons at his easy disposal, like he'd have swords hanging on the wall and knives of all sorts of varieties.
There was a samurai sword, if I remember, on the mantelpiece, and I did on one occasion see a gun in the house, but I made it clear that it wasn't appropriate for me to be even cognizant of anything of that sort.
Kath's grandson Jason, by now a young teenager, comes to live with Dennis Allen as one of his soldiers.
I know what you're thinking.
But not everyone enters Dennis's world voluntarily.
There were times when he'd kidnap women, multiples of women.
Jenny McMahon is 19 and has a promising modelling career when a friend introduces her to Dennis.
We went around to his house. He kept spiking their drinks and everything, and he stopped me and I said, "What?" And he said, "You're not going anywhere." And I said, "I have to go home." He said, "No, you're not."
He likes what he sees and decides to keep her captive.
Well, that night, he actually, raped me, sodomised me, and also he bashed me.
What's that look for, bitch?
Look, Dennis, I didn't do nothing.
Bullshit. I know what you're thinking.
I'm not thinking anything.
Who told you you could talk?
He was the first one to put a needle in my arm, and I was, oh my God, what is this?
You don't talk until I tell you to talk.
Oh, speed, he was pumping it into me.
You don't move until I tell you you can move. You don't do bloody anything until I tell you. Do you understand?
He wanted people all the time around him to cover him, to do this, and he had his minders and everything.
When Dennis goes out, he appoints Kath's teenage grandson Jason to guard Jenny.
This bitch moves. What they do here?
No worries. I'll make sure the bitch don't move.
Like he had a gun on me and a knife on me. If Dennis went out, he was the boss of me.
I'm watching you.
One day, the door was open, unlocked, and I ran for it, and I got to the road in Richmond, and there was 3 guns at my head. I pulled the taxi over and he saw the guns and he wasn't going to stop, and got big trouble for that. Chained up and my head in a bucket of water. I am so lucky because every other girl he went out with is dead. I'm the survivor. And I can't believe it.
Who are you Come on! I see you! Come on! Come on! Take that!
Kath Pettingill's eldest son, Dennis Allen, has set up a criminal empire next to her brothel in the inner Melbourne suburb of Richmond.
You can't get me, you bastard!
By now, he's staying awake for up to 14 days, living in a perpetual state of speed-fueled rage. Jenny McMahon, who's his prisoner, and who later gives birth to his child, remembers the madness.
He made me stay up 13 days and 13 nights, and I was going crazy because
One night, a police helicopter is hovering over the street when Dennis begins firing at it.
It was like a bloody big game with the police. They'd come round the next morning after Dennis was asleep and say, "Will you tell him you stop shooting at us?"
He was a very clever criminal as far as concealing weapons. He'd conceal them over the fence with a string on them from next door. He was aware of the law of possession, and if it wasn't on your property, you weren't in possession. Now, given an idea of her, of Kath Pettingill's thinking, young Jason Ryan, who was only a kid in those days, on one occasion when we searched the premises, we found a pen pistol under his pillow, and again, this was part of their ploy. If you hide it in the child's room, well, who's going to be charged? I'm not living in that room, I'm not in possession of the firearm, therefore I can't be convicted of it. And we said to her, well, who's going to wear this? Kath, he's only a lad, only a boy, he's old enough. That was the answer, he's old enough.
Despite police raids, it seems to Dennis that he's immune from arrest.
And he lived in an era that cops could not be trusted. You know, in the late 70s, early 80s, that no informer, no drug addict would come forward safe in the knowledge they'd be protected to give evidence against the likes of Dennis.
His violent reputation leads the Melbourne underworld to give Dennis the nickname Mr. D, meaning Mr. Death.
You know, after the Mr. T saga on TV, and that's how he saw himself. He openly wore large gold necklaces, numerous of them, watches, diamonds. It was just a complete exhibition, basically.
At one stage there, he bought some pretty good heroin. He knew it was good heroin, and he told his crew to cut it accordingly, and they didn't cut it enough. And suddenly, there was 5 people found dead in the vicinity of his home in Stephenson Street. And I remember he went down and slapped one of the blokes that was selling it. He said, "You've even killed my hairdresser. I was supposed to get my hair cut tomorrow or the next day."
Kath adapts to this violent world as Dennis teaches her how to revive victims of overdoses by injecting their jugular veins with alcohol and speed.
The House of Horrors. Yeah. A few people got murdered there, you know. Dennis was a fairly good person, a serious person. And he was a genius at working out who was talking shit, who was serious, and who wasn't. Dennis was a person who, if he said he's going to knock you, he'd knock you.
There was never any caution with him. He threw all caution to the wind, and if there's an argument, he just pull a gun out and shoot somebody. And that was acceptable to him and the family.
With his continuous drug abuse causing severe psychosis and paranoia, Dennis suddenly decides that one of his friends, Wayne Stanhope, can't be trusted.
Wayne Stanhope was a spy for a pack of some other crims. He was sent down there just to see what's going on, and of course, Dennis already knew that.
Cheers.
During a party at home, Dennis casually asks Stanhope to put on a record.
Mate, go and put that song on again, would you? Sure.
He actually said, "Can you go and put your song back on, you know?" And he walked to the stereo. Dennis went, bang.
Hello, Dennis!
And I went, oh my God.
Dennis! Jason! 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 Jason!
Speed and adrenaline are now pumping through the drug lord's veins.
Jason! Where's my little auto?
In a blind rage and refusing to believe that Stanhope is dead, he then takes a gun from his young nephew, Jason.
Jason came out with the other gun and he saw it. Dennis emptied the whole gun as well, and poor Jason, 13, he went spewed up and he was that sick.
That'll happen to you if you don't keep your mouth shut.
All right. We'll keep our mouth shut, yeah?
Hand me the knife, I want to see if this dog's dead.
And then the rotten bastard pulled him on the tiles and slit his throat as well.
Don't just sit here. Clean this place up!
All trace of killing is removed and the body is never found.
And they all burnt their clothes and everything, and I was told to burn my clothes. And
Kath's pitiless nature is clearly exposed by her bitter complaints that Dennis has ruined her vacuum cleaner by using it to clean up blood and parts of Stanhope's brain.
And I said, Kathy, your eldest son has just put 12 bullets in somebody's head on the sitting room floor in front of a room full of guests, and you're concerned about your vacuum cleaner. And she looked at me and she said, Adrian, there are things about me you don't know, and there's a side to me you haven't seen, and I don't particularly want you to see it.
Dennis was a product of the environment. He was a serious person. There's no point in talking. Because they're not going to listen, they go away and laugh. He was one of them people that, you could talk to him and it wouldn't penetrate because you were talking shit. And if they annoyed him, he would turn the radio up and put them off and get rid of the body. No other discussions entered into it.
The speed got him. Injecting himself every few minutes with speed.
My God, Dennis!
Because he didn't know who I was in his amphetamine. I'd have to say to him, Dennis, it's me, I'm your mother. Because he'd chase me in next door with the gun. I'd have to say, stop, it's me, because then he sort of pulled back and he knew that he was wrong. But it could have been me any time.
Well, don't just sit here. Clean this place up!
The madness continues when Dennis, with a cord hanging permanently on his arm, ready for his next injection, orders the killing of a drug supplier.
Come on, stand up, sweetie, that's it, Dennis! Helga, come on, love, come on. Helga, wake up, come on, love, you can, Dennis!
This is closely followed by another pointless murder.
Please, Dennis!
What?
Come here!
When prostitute and heroin addict Helga Wagner suffers a heroin overdose and is near to death in Kath's brothel, Dennis decides to finish her off.
I'll fix her. You're right. I'll fix you. No, stop. I'll be right. I'll sort you. Jason!
What are you doing?
He sends his nephew Jason, Kath's grandson, to collect a bucket of river water,
Give me the bucket.
which he pours down Helga's throat before holding her head in the bucket until she drowns.
Stop moving, you bitch! Stop it! Stop it!
The body is found in the river and a coroner's inquest is ordered. It's at this point that Dennis recruits his younger brother Jamie into his criminal empire. Jamie has been a violent criminal from an early age.
He was an armed robber. He was robbing hotels and he shot a barman. And the barman died, unfortunately, and they charged him with murder. He was acquitted. Yeah, but he was a good kid.
On the day of the coroner's inquest, Dennis sends his younger brother Jamie to deliver a violent gesture of defiance.
If you then look at the contempt that they held the system in, they went and blew the coroner's court up on the morning of the inquest with a drum of petrol and a couple of sticks of gelignite.
The small bomb was detonated only hours before the inquest into the death of 30-year-old prostitute Helga Wagner was due to begin.
A few days after Jamie delivers the bomb, he's found dead, killed by a massive heroin overdose.
Jamie, again, was he was a hothead, very ruthless, very violent, died of a drug overdose, and was probably a great outcome for everybody. Very unpredictable. And he was a bit of a problem to the family because he was like that. I mean, he'd do things like someone to look at the wrong way, he'd been traffic something, he'd be just likely to get out and belt somebody.
Although he was well known as an addict, Kath, who never finds fault in her children, insists he's been murdered with what's called a heroin hotshot. Delusion runs deep in Kath's family, especially in Dennis, who by this time thinks he's all-powerful and untouchable. His next murder is even more audacious. The victim is a Hells Angel bikie named Anton Kenny, who was again lured into Dennis's house.
There was a party, it was Dennis's birthday party, and he was accused of doing something, and Dennis took appropriate action, what Dennis thought was appropriate.
Got to be on his terms, you know. G'day, mate, and have a drink, have a couple of drinks. Do you want to try a bit of speed or something, Get in a relaxed atmosphere, then kill him.
You dog!
Anton Kenny is shot 3 times. His body is then moved to another of Dennis's houses in Richmond to be prepared for disposal. With the windows boarded up, plastic sheeting on the floor, and a 44-gallon drum at the ready, the scene is set for a terrible blood-soaked event.
We chopped him up and he said I couldn't get his bloody legs in the barrel. I had to go back and chop them up too to shove them in there, and they had to get the lid on the barrel.
When Dennis sawed off the leg because it wouldn't fit in the 40-gallon drum, Kathy said very casually to me, "You needn't have fucking bothered. Rigor mortis only lasts so long. After a while it goes off."
The gruesome job completed, the drum is topped up with acid, lime and cement before it's sealed and dumped in the Yarra River.
And when they rolled the barrel into the Yarra, it wouldn't go out far enough, so it sort of stuck out the water.
Police find out about the killing and are about to charge Dennis with murder. He immediately seeks a deal and names a convicted murderer, Peter Robinson, as the killer.
Well, as I indicated at the time to them, that more than likely Robinson probably helped dispose of the body but was unlikely to be the murderer, that Dennis was more likely to be the murderer, and I think his history has borne that out. But he did get his freedom on the basis of trading out on that. And as it eventually turned out, he was responsible for the murder.
Dennis escapes prosecution for the Kenny murder, but his crimes finally catch up with him anyway. Witnesses to another killing agree to testify against him, and he's finally arrested and handed his first murder charge. But it comes too late. Dennis dies in 1987, his body weakened by years of drug abuse.
See, that's the life he chose. Right? Tough job, he done it.
I think Dennis's whole situation over the last couple of weeks showed a lot of regret. There was none of the bravado left. As his physical powers faded away, I think I could see in his whole posture a sense of regret and sadness about the nature of his life. Not a lot of that was articulated, but it was written all over him.
Dennis is certainly responsible for at least 12 murders where he's been implicated in the death of these people and disposal of their bodies.
After his death, it emerges that Dennis has been feeding information to the police.
Dennis Allen was providing information to the homicide squad, which it turned out he was actually killing the people and then providing information where the bodies could be found, saying other people had killed them.
The homicide squad said, "Don't you think it's about time you tell us where all the bodies are? so that we can let the family bury him.
The death of Kath Pettingill's eldest son Dennis brings his murderous drug empire to an end.
Throughout the years of Dennis Allen's criminal reign, his full brother Peter is in and out of prison for drug and armed robbery offences. And while he's inside, Peter is part of a sophisticated drug ring.
We had corrupt prison officers bringing the drugs in, and we distribute them, put the money in. The money would go on the TAB accounts, and the families were helped. The profits.
Peter was a heavy user of methamphetamine, probably more organised criminal than Dennis, I would say. A lot of rat cunning. He had an extremely, his biggest fault, and one that was easily exploited, was his ego. He had a huge ego. He was untouchable. He could do what he liked.
With Dennis dead and his brother Peter back in jail for another long stretch, two of Kath's younger sons, Victor and Trevor, now move to centre stage.
Victor Peirce was not a madman like Dennis Allen. Victor Peirce was a far more cold and calculating person. He was dangerous.
I'm innocent.
Victor Peirce would be a more planned killer. So if he was going to do something, he would plan to do it. All the things that the community may find disgusting or frightening or threatening was just a way of life for him.
With Peirce also.
But he was accused of robbing a few armed vans in it, and I heard he was pretty good at it. Absolutely ruthless. He was a real deal. If you said that bloke has done the wrong thing, I'm going to knock him, he'd knock him. Simple as that. Victor
was a person that I treated with a lot more respect than I had for Dennis or Peter. I would consider him a lot more dangerous, a lot more ruthless, and capable of anything.
In 1987, members of an elusive armed hold-up gang known as the Flemington Crew are shot down in separate confrontations with police in Melbourne.
Victor Peirce's best friend at the time is Graeme Jensen, his accomplice in many armed robberies. On the 11th of October, a police trap's planned to apprehend Jensen and charge him with a murder. He spots the waiting police, who call on him to surrender. He goes for his gun, and he's then shot and killed. 33-year-old Graeme Jensen, who was wanted for the murder of a security guard at a Brunswick supermarket in July, was shot dead by police at Narre Warren.
And they'd been involved in surveillance and went out to do an arrest on him, and which resulted in him being killed.
On hearing the news of his friend's death, Victor Peirce flies into a rage, weeping and vowing revenge. Early the next morning, two police constables are patrolling on the night shift in South Yarra. They are constables Steve Tynan and Damien Eyre. It's just before 4 a.m. They answer a radio call to investigate an abandoned car in Walsh Street.
They did what any other police would have done. They pulled up behind the vehicle. Constable Tynan went to the driver's side and had actually hopped in, was looking about how the vehicle had been started. It had a smash bent window and the ignition had been tampered with hot wired.
Damon.
While he's done that, Constable Eyre's gone to the passenger side and he's actually written down the registration number and checked that against the registration label, because he had the expiry date on his clipboard.
Yeah, it's definitely stolen. Just have a look around, I'll get the rego, then we'll call it in.
He then walked around the driver's side and was leaning over the driver's side, obviously conversing with Constable Tynan, when he's been approached from behind.
Put it down! Put it down! Give me the gun! Get the gun!
He's then turned and obviously deflected the firearm. The gun's gone off again and hit a house on the first floor with a round of SGs. Someone has then walked up and pulled his revolver out and shot him at point blank range in the vicinity of the bottom of the ear. And then when he's gone to the ground, he's been shot at about a 45-degree angle through the side, which went through his heart. So, you know, like he was instantaneously dead with the shot to the heart and also the shot to the brain. Constable Tynan was shot directly through the top of the head with a full load of SGs from a 12-gauge shotgun. There's no such thing as a minor injury with a shotgun.
South Melbourne 150, I sent Plan 311 down to Walsh Street. Since then I've had about 3 or 4 cards come down saying that they've heard shots fired in that street, and I can't get Plan 311 at this stage.
South Melbourne 350, 2 members down, urgent.
About 4:20 in the morning I got a phone call from John Noonan, who was the senior sergeant in charge of the crew. He said, I'll pick up in 20 minutes, 2 of our guys have been shot. It was a very sobering sight to walk down a street and see police uniforms just laying there in blood. Very emotional. I mean, I'll never forget going back to the office and people were just in tears, you know, and you couldn't console them, you know. And, to slaughter two young fellas at 20 and 21, and that have now no longer got a life, and the effect that that's had on their families. Very few other crimes in my book would rate the level of callousness of that action.
It was quite evident in the early stages that it was a very callous and calculated killing. One motive was its relationship to the Graeme Jensen shooting the day before. So it was always going to be a very difficult investigation, and one that you were going to need extra resources.
I hoped at that stage that it wasn't the Peirce Pettingill family, because I knew it was going to be a hard road.
The murders shocked Victoria. There was a massive public outcry over the murder of those 2 police. The Guard of Honour at the funerals at the Academy went for more than a kilometre. There was real emotion amongst the police and the broader community. Some saw it as the murder of 2 police. Most saw it as an attack on the rule of law in Victoria. It was effectively an act of terrorism to randomly select 2 police.
My first thought, another day in Melbourne.
Senior police set in motion a major operation to track down the killers of police officers Tynan and Eyre. Across the state, grieving colleagues volunteer for extra duty.
It wasn't just an offence against the police force, it was an offence against the public. It was a community offence, so the community were very, very supportive.
The stolen car was left there. They didn't go after the people that they hated, which was the armed robbery squad, who they felt had wrongfully killed their mate, Graeme Jensen, 13 hours earlier. They put a car there and they waited, and they didn't care who turned up as long as they were wearing the Victoria Police uniform, and then they shot them from behind.
Put it down! Put it down! Give me the gun! Get the gun! Get it down! Get the gun!
The investigation is named Thai Air and will become the largest ever conducted by the Victoria Police, lasting some 900 days.
Killing police is a major criminal taboo, and the underworld is now prepared for a disruptive backlash. Fearful of being blamed for the outrage, many of the current escapees from the state's prisons turn themselves in.
We started out with, I think, something like 39 escapees across Australia. I think within 2 weeks, most of them given themselves up into police stations because they just didn't want to be part of it. But they thought, this is too much for me, I'd rather go back and do my time.
What a piece of shit you are!
Detectives immediately suspect that Kath's clan is behind the murders, and on the day after the attack, dozens of officers descend on the house of Kath's son, Victor Peirce, in the Stevenson Street compound.
It would take a particular type of criminal to commit that type of killing.
Get the gun! Get the gun! Get the gun!
Victor's home is demolished, the backyard dug up, and every particle examined for evidence. It's suggested to the investigators that if Victor was involved in the killings, then the key might be to question Kath's grandson, Jason.
I'd retired by then, but the more you get as things go along, I rang the hotline and I told them to pick up Jason. He was their only hope in that house. And I told them if they treated him properly, he'd most probably open up like a watermelon falling off a truck.
The police advice proves to be solid. Jason has had enough of his violent world with Kath's sons. Jason agrees to testify against his uncles. Meanwhile, the war goes on. Police resume their operation against the armed robbers, and 2 more are shot and killed. Both of them also happen to be prime suspects in the Walsh Street murders. The Thai Air investigation continues for more than 2 years before detectives finally make 4 arrests.
Victor Peirce's name was linked with drug dealing.
Victor Peirce, his half-brother Trevor Pettingill, and their associates Anthony Lee Farrell and Peter David McAvoy are charged with the Walsh Street murders. They're immediately sent to Pentridge Prison's notoriously violent H Division.
It was a brutal place. Whenever a prisoner arrived there was a systematic bashing by the prison officers. The prisoner would be stripped naked, surrounded by several prison officers and belted for several minutes. And if he resisted, the bashing would continue.
The prosecution reveals that in addition to Jason, they have a new star witness. She gives police a detailed account of Victor's planning and the direction of the executions. But as the trial's about to get underway, she suddenly withdraws her testimony and the police case collapses. Jason's evidence alone is not enough to convince the jury, and the 4 men are acquitted. As the news breaks, police across Victoria are sent a special radio message urging them to control their anger.
Well, all they found was they're not guilty. They're certainly not saying they're innocent. They had a doubt. It's reasonable doubt.
Inside the car, the scenes of jubilation continued.
Good as gold. Good as gold.
What about you, Kath? You got your boy home?
Oh, my oath, I've got him home. Family's nearly all complete now.
He feels sorry for the families of the 2 policemen killed.
They've been deceived all this time that we are the ones what done it when in fact we aren't.
Pretty shocked. Pretty shocked.
Did you expect that?
Not really, no, not at all.
The 42-year-old was sitting in his parked car in the busy Bay Street shopping centre. Another vehicle pulled up alongside. A man got out and fired several shots.
A few years after the acquittals, Victor Peirce is shot dead by a rival criminal, Andrew Benji Venyamin, who is himself then killed.
I could never bring him back, and yeah, miss him heaps.
Well, I'm glad Victor died the way he did, because he wasn't mutilated, he wasn't hurt, you know, he went quick.
Some years after the Walsh Street acquittals, Trevor and Kath Pettingill get involved in a new drug-dealing enterprise. But they're caught after undercover detective Lachlan McCulloch infiltrates Kath's family and narrowly avoids being murdered by a killer named Stacker.
That he obtained the name because he stacked up dead bodies on his front doorstep after allegedly deliberately overdosing certain people.
Detective McCulloch endured a dangerous 9 months undercover inside Kath's family circle.
And Stacker was, and Kath were planning to rob me at one stage because I was rocking up with very large amounts of cash. And Trevor actually protected me from Stacker and stopped him from cutting my throat.
McCulloch's courage pays off and results in 15 people, including Kath and Trevor being convicted.
Trevor got 7 with a minimum of 5. Stacker got 5. One of the heroin suppliers got 11 years. You know, many of them got very good sentences. Kath received an 18-month sentence, which she'd already served, because the magistrate made the comment that she was showing signs of rehabilitation.
Kath retires to a quiet life in the Victorian seaside town of Venus Bay. Trevor lives nearby. Kath's other son, Peter, who has spent most of his adult life behind bars, has no contact with her.
I have not got a relationship with Kath Pettingill, nor do I need one, nor do I want one. Simple as that.
No, I don't want him here. He doesn't know where I live. And if you try and find out where I live, I'll think that you'll get short shift down the shops, because they won't tell you. Leave me alone. Get on with your own life, leave me alone.
Never really fought with her verbally or anything like that, but after Dennis died and all his wealth got distributed amongst people other than his children, and they're living on the street.
Kath is also estranged from her grandson Jason and her daughter Vicky, who remains under witness protection. Kath has received a framed citation from the Victorian Premier for her voluntary work driving women to and from weekly bingo sessions. And it's just one reflection of the range of images she projects.
Kath Pettingill is a woman that's reared murdering, drug trafficking, lying, perjuring, manipulators of community interest standards over a long period of time.
She saw herself as Ma Barker, and you know, I'm the boss of the clan, and she enjoyed it.
I was just being me.
Kathy can be a very warm, intensely loyal human being. So it's wrong to write the whole family off as being unmitigatedly vicious and evil.
She has ruled a clan of outlaws, and outlaws in the true sense. You know, they have lived their life without law.
And she contributed by the fact of probably being the neglectful mother, and they could do what they could do, and she could see no wrong in them. And if the police turned up and said, well, your son's just raped somebody, she'd defend them to the death.
She could have done more, and she would have liked to have been able to have given them a more protected life in their early years. That realisation dawned on her as she saw Dennis more and more out of control in his adult life. But you can't unwind history.
We're talking about a woman who's, you know, lost 2 children to heroin overdoses, who's happy to traffic in heroin.
With all the mixtures of drugs that are out now, no. I'd hate to be anywhere near them.
I've told you before, Charlie, no.
Come on, Helga, wake up! Dennis! Don't let him speak to me like that. Bit of respect around here, eh?
The amount of people that have died at the hands of her family, through directly or indirectly, through their drug trafficking and general criminal behaviour, can never be underestimated. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of community lives have been wrecked in some way or impacted on in some way because of the likes of Kath Pettingill and her family. And that should never be underestimated. A lot of those people don't get up after 5 years or 2 years or 10 years and go on with their life. They're dead, or they've been impacted on where their lives have been forever changed for the worse. And that's not something that we forget. Until the day she dies, she should pay for what she has done to society.